KOC demands that you perform all work safely and protect the environment at all times. This film is aimed to support the explanation of KOC HSEMS procedure, document number KOC.SA.007, on entry into confined space. Confined space entry is a non-routine activity which requires a duly authorized permit prior to its entry. This type of entry work is potentially hazardous and has injured and killed workers in industry internationally when safety controls have not been adequate. The following safety requirements in this film apply to you, so please watch and listen carefully. A confined space at any one of the KOC facilities includes any enclosure having a limited means of entry and exit that is not designed for continuous occupancy. Common examples include process vessels, tanks, bins, stacks, large pipework, ducts, pits and vaults, or for that matter, any enclosure where the presence of airborne contaminants may be harmful to a worker and prevent easy escape. You need to be able to easily recognize a confined space at KOC. Entry by workers is often required for the purposes of inspection, cleaning, maintenance and repair, construction. Occasionally, emergency rescue might also be required. It's important to note that entry doesn't just mean full body entry. Just putting your head in a vessel briefly is also deemed to be an entry. Confined spaces must be treated with respect at all times. Confined spaces can present the following potential hazards: the presence of flammable and/or toxic fluids, vapors and dusts, oxygen deficiency, high temperature and humidity, exposure to sources of energy, hydraulic, pneumatic and electrical, process chemicals and materials that are contained in these areas, and difficult access, work at height, and ease of escape in the event of an emergency. Any one of or combination of the hazards above could spell disaster. However, there are fundamental safety procedures and rules that must be applied to help protect you from these hazards. KOC issues specific work permits for this type of specialized work. It's responsibility of the KOC work permit issuer to make certain that the following controls are in place before anyone enters a confined space. 1. All obvious and potential hazards are identified. 2. All energy sources have been correctly isolated. 3. Safe levels of breathable oxygen are present and gas checks on all potential hazardous gases and dusts have been conducted with specialized equipment by trained personnel, before and during the scheduled work. And 4. That a safety standby person is available during all confined space work. A KOC worksite supervisor is responsible for 1. Ensuring JSA and conduct toolbox talk. 2. Inspecting and checking that emergency response equipment is functional and in place. 3. That all permit conditions are being complied with. 4. Gas monitoring is in accordance with the work permit. 5. The workers entering the confined space are physically fit. And 6. The area is made safe when work is completed. A safety standby person will be allocated to a confined space job. His responsibilities include 1. Ensuring all workers understand how and where to evacuate the work area in case of an emergency. 2. Maintaining radio communication during entry and the course of the work. 3. Notifying the control room regarding the entry and exit of people. 4. Maintaining the log of all persons entering and leaving the confined space. 5. checking on emergency response equipment and PPE of workers. And 6. To safely observe and interact, but never to enter the confined space. Each confined space is different and must be treated on a case-by-case safety basis. The following key requirements apply to all. Pre-entry planning and potential hazard assessment. A systematic risk review involving communication with the entire work team concerning energy source and process isolations, including depressurization, draining, flushing, purging as required for safe execution of work. Required PPE. Ventilation, lighting and gas testing. Heat, cold, noise, vibration, fatigue and specialist chemical hazards. Rescue personnel and equipment. And observer standby person requirements. Preparation for entry. Other considerations and controls include positive isolation, meaning physical disconnection or spading which safeguards against entry of chemicals or other harmful substances. Ventilation, drainage and environment controls. Blowdown, flaring and area cordoning off. Steam, water and chemical washes, nitrogen, air and other inerting gas use. And static electricity and bonding. Testing and monitoring. Flammable vapors, toxic gases and oxygen testing requirements. 1. Gas tests externally by authorized and trained personnel. 2. Determination of safe and unsafe work environments pertaining to oxygen content, H2S, hydrocarbon concentrations and other substances. Other controls include cordoning off the area and posting safety signs and warning notices in English and Arabic languages, and personnel will be given rest periods of 30-minute intervals or more frequently depending on the conditions inside a confined space. To summarize, you should be able to recognize a confined space and be aware that a strict KOC work permit system exists to ensure that this type of work is conducted safely. 2. You should be aware of potential hazards including oxygen deficiency, hazardous chemicals, toxic vapors and gases, electricity and other energy as well as process sources. Similarly, care for heat, working at height, and any difficulties in escape or response to emergency which must be taken. 3. Key personnel have responsibilities to ensure safety, including the KOC work permit issuer, work site supervisor, authorized gas tester, and safety standby personnel. And 4. There are strict requirements relating to the preparation of the work area, hazard identification and risk assessment, pre-entry testing, and gas monitoring requirements. KOC appreciates that its systems must ensure a safe approach to any confined space work activity. If you require further clarification regarding any point or issue raised in this film, please do not hesitate in discussing the matter further with a KOC supervisor or HSE department personnel. For further detail, please refer to Entry into Confined Space procedure through KOC intranet selecting Planning and Gas Directorate, then HSE Group webpage, then HSEMS Procedures, and finally, HSEMS Procedure KOC.SA.007.